it's Staff, my Christmas Autism Girl. Welcome back to my channel. So first of all, I apologize for not posting lately. I've been sick with some medical stuff, but I'm back today. So I just haven't been able to work on YouTube since then. So today we're going to be discussing Ahsoka Tano, the Star Wars character. So when we were first introduced to Ahsoka, people found her annoying and didn't think she'd last long in the series due to her lack of presence or Revenge of the Sith. But they found a way around that. But as she grew, I was one of the few people that actually liked her from the start. Now, do I think she got better as she becomes a complex character? Yes, but I did like her from the beginning. So Ahsoka becomes a complex character means that she is well-rounded. As seasons 3 through 5 especially is very complex. She's still rebellious and stubborn, but she cares deeply about Rex and the clones. She learns things aren't so black and white. In the war, she learns a lot about herself and what it means to be a Jedi. She's raised in war, she faces loss and turmoil, and she's a big part of why I love the Clone Wars. Ahsoka and Lux Monteri. So as we're introduced in this episode, Heroes on Both Sides. Ahsoka's introduced to Lux he was a separatist. His mother was a separatist sinner, and that's when she learns the war isn't so black and white. However, she slowly starts falling in love with him. And so when they meet again, his mother has been killed by Count Dooku. He wants revenge and seeks the help of the Death Watch. She convinces him not to. And then they end up saying goodbye again. And he says they make a good team. But she wishes he would have stayed. Because the next time she saw him, he was starting to fall in love with another girl, Saw Gerrera from Rogue One's sister. So she ended up saying to him that he knows she likes him, I think, but his master told her purpose comes before feeling, and she says, I know, but it's so hard. And he says, Anakin Skywalker, her master, says, I know, I understand. And she is shocked and says he does. He says, yes, but purpose comes before feeling. So, very cool moment for him. He tells her to focus, but she has trouble focusing. So this is when she leads the rebels in Onderon. So next we're at Ahsoka's plot with the Jedi. So toward the end of the war, when she's 16, she is becoming a great warrior. However, she gets framed for blowing up the Jedi Temple, a crime she didn't commit. The Jedi stand by her. Most of them, for Anakin and Obi-Wan, they believe that she did it. Now, toward the end, Plo Koon and Yoda all vote against what the Jedi did, but it doesn't make it okay. So she gets framed for this crime by her friend Barriss, who had lost faith in the Jedi and wants to prove that they're no better than the Separatists. And so Ahsoka ends up getting kicked out of the Jedi Order by the Jedi, except for Anakin, Obi-Wan, Plo Koon, and Yoda. They all vote to get her out so they can have a real trial with the Senate. So they face this trial. Just at that moment, Anakin finds that Barriss did it. However, Ahsoka has completely lost faith in the Jedi. She says, the Council didn't trust me, how can I trust myself? And then Anakin asks, what about me? And he says, I stood by you. And she says, I believed in you. And she says she knows she believes in him, but she can't stay there any longer. And they end up having a moment where they both agree they wish they could walk away from the Jedi. And she actually walks out. And so now Anakin has a big Ahsoka-shaped hole in his heart based on where she is. So Ahsoka and the Siege of Mandalore. So in Clone Wars seasons, she's not in Clone Wars season 6, because that was the end of season 5. Clone Wars and the end of Siege of Mandalore is where Ahsoka, works with Bo-Katan. So let me back up. So Maul has just taken over Mandalore, and Bo-Katan of Death Watch has turned against him and decided that maybe it was wrong what she did. And so she ends up making a deal with the Republic to send Ahsoka with the clones. But since Ahsoka is no longer part of the Republic, and Anakin and Obi-Wan are preoccupied with rescuing the Chancellor, and she believes it's more about politics than doing what's right. But they end up doing this thing where they have Rex be commander and her come along as a guide. So it works out in their favor. She ends up fighting Maul. She ends up coming to the surface and kicks, and is really awesome and cool, and she does what's right, and she finds out that Anakin has been sent to spy on the Chancellor and no longer believes in the Jedi at all. And so she ends up fighting Maul because he believes Anakin will become to the dark side. She doesn't believe it because she has utter faith in him. So they duel and fight. But then Ahsoka learns, but then she ends up defeating him with the help of the clones. And so she's taken up, but then Order 66 is declared. And rather than kill the clone, she frees Rex from the inhibitor chip that caused the clones to turn bad. And so they end up fighting the clones to try to do that. As revealed in the Test of the Jedi, she learned how to battle clones, so thanks to Anakin. And so Ahsoka has now survived Order 66 3 times, basically. She survived it with at least 2 times. So she survived it with the worms in that episode of Clone Wars. And I forget the 3rd time, but yeah, she survived clones turning against her a lot, but she always had faith in them and said I couldn't have asked for better soldiers. So she ends up surviving and moves on and ends up becoming a spy for the rebellion, which leads us to where she reveals that it's Ahsoka, and she works with them. She's against rescuing Kanan because she values the many before the few, showing her maturity. But in the end, she supports them rescuing Kanan because she believes in family and bringing the hope. And so she ends up finding out that Anakin is Darth Vader based on a vision she has in the temple, where he blames her for him turning to the dark side. Really, she blames herself. And so when they go, Ezra and them are sent to Malachor, a Sith planet, where there's a Sith temple and a Sith holocron. And there was a battle thousands of years ago where no one won. And so, because they used this weapon that wiped out everybody. And so Ahsoka battles Darth Vader, believing that she's avenging Anakin's death. And so she goes toe to toe with him. But in the end, he does defeat her but then Ezra goes back in time and saves her between worlds. So Ahsoka and her show. So Ahsoka was in The Mandalorian in season 2, and it's a really awesome episode called The Jedi. Very good, very well choreographed, chill worthy. And in her show, I didn't think they did her justice. I thought it wasn't really about Ahsoka. I mean, Ahsoka was my favorite character for a long time. But then I feel like in her show, she just it's not as an interesting character as she was when she was younger. But that's just my opinion. I liked her in The Rebels and in seasons 3 through 5, The Clone Wars the best. I thought she was the best then. But I don't know if I can say Ahsoka's still my favorite character because there's so much material out there. I'm not sure. I think it's still Jyn Erso and Hera. But that wraps it up for this video on Ahsoka. If you enjoyed it, please comment and subscribe to other fun stuff. See you next time. Bye.